We've all heard of Bird by Bird, On Writing, Big Magic, and Rick Rubin's latest. But have you heard of Room to Write, Pen on Fire, Making a Literary Life, or A Writer's Guide to Persistence? They're all fantastic. This week, I would love to share with you 10 or 11 of my lesser known but equally impactful books on the creative life and writing. I hope you'll join me. I hope that you have a nice warm cup of tea or a cool beverage, whatever suits the day for you. It is another very rainy day here in Maine. We've had a whole slew of them. And yeah, so I love nothing more on a rainy day than curling up with a good book. And I was thinking about, like I said in the intro, lesser known books on the creative life and writing. I firmly believe, as a multi-passionate creative person, that advice in writing books and creativity books in general can be applied to whatever your discipline. I find things to be just as resonant in my knitting life as in my writing life a lot of times. So I hope that even if you're not a writer, if you consider yourself a creative person, you will give some of these a try. They will not disappoint. All right, we're ready to get into it. I have had this book for years and years and years. In fact, I think I bought it right after my high school graduation. It is Room to Write by Bonnie Goldberg, and I point that out because I don't think there's any relation to Natalie Goldberg, which is another, author that we all know and love. I have all of the books that I noted in my intro, but again, I don't think they need any shout outs or introductions, so we're going to stick with these that you might not have heard of. So this is Daily Invitations to a Writer's Life, and it is full of little tiny snippets of writing, hints, tips, like perspective shifts, and then she gives you a writing prompt. You can open this up to any different page. You could read it all the way through. They're just really fantastic tidbits about the writing life and invitations to get you writing. And yeah, just nuggets of wisdom. Next, in some circles, this will need no introduction, but in others, you might not have heard of it. This is Still Writing: The Perils and Pleasures of a Creative Life by Dani Shapiro. Dani Shapiro is a novelist as well as a nonfiction writer and memoirist. Here is the book. It is lovely. This one in particular, I love because it's broken up into beginnings, middles, and endings. And she talks about what it's like to write each of those different sections of a book or a project. And I wanted to read this excerpt from Middles. It's called Building the Boat. I was in the middle of my second novel and struggling. Instead of engagement, I felt a nagging worry. Had I lost my way? Maybe I had taken a wrong turn, but where? One afternoon, I met a friend of mine, a poet and novelist, for coffee. I feel like I'm in a boat in the middle of the ocean and there's no land in sight, I told him. He took a sip of his drink and peered at me over his glasses. Yeah, he said, and you're building the boat. I think that is so fitting for everyone to remember that they're not alone in this process, whether it's the middle of knitting a sweater and you're not sure that it's coming together, whether it's writing a novel and you're in the middle of it and you have no idea how you're going to get to the end, how you even got to where you are. So this is a relatable book that really just makes you feel less alone. All of these books are going to do that. This next one is Affirmations for Writers by Kelly DePew. This is a small but mighty book. The bulk of the book is only about 30 pages long, but it shows step by step how to write affirmations that will help your writing life. The remainder of the book is full of affirmations that you can use and tweak for yourself. Let's see, on the back it says, imagine a writing life where you foster and nourish your creative self with powerful, positive, and heart-centered affirmations. Imagine showing up at the page ready to write, full of passion and hope, and leaving doubt behind. So in Affirmations for Writers, you'll discover over 100 affirmations tailored to writers, what affirmations are and why they're powerful, how to use affirmations to conquer self-doubt, limiting beliefs, and imposter syndrome, and how to create unique and powerful affirmations to reach your goals. It's fantastic. Kelly is a lovely person. She's a dear friend of mine and a fellow writer, obviously, but even though this is tailored to writers, again, I think you could take this and use it as any sort of creative artist, knitter, anything. So these are super helpful, and she talks about why affirmations are not necessarily as woo-woo as you think. So super helpful to have. I keep that by my desk all the time. The next book is Pen on Fire, A Busy Woman's Guide to Igniting the Writer Within by Barbara DeMarco Barrett. This is another one that is relatable, super relatable. She is a writing teacher, a writer herself, and it's just, again, full of helpful advice on everything from revision to overcoming obstacles. I was reading some of the sections. Mining your life for details. That is a huge thing in both fiction writing and nonfiction writing. Tools and rituals. I love this section. Teaching your pen to listen. What else is there? And getting started. So this is, this book, she shares a lot of personal anecdotes, which I really appreciate. And if I'm remembering correctly, she has a son and she makes jewelry as well. And I think those tidbits kind of come through and just kind of flesh out this story and flesh out this idea of what a writer's life actually looks like. It's not, all of these books too, it's not just a single solitary life. It's expansive and full, and you have to make room for it. You have to make room for your creative life. And this is a great example of how to do it, but also how to be kind to yourself while you're doing it, because life is not always slow and dreamy, and life does not always make room for writing. We need to make room for it ourselves. This next book is Making a Literary Life, Advice for Writers and Other Dreamers by Carolyn C. There you go. This book I read quite a long time ago, and what I remember from it is how to not only be a writer, but this idea of a literary life is also being a part of a community. How do we show up for other writers? How do we want other writers to show up for ourselves? How can we participate in this life and make it, expansive is one of my go-to words, but really make it meaningful, make it work for us, and making it connective. I think in this book she talks about reaching out to other writers who you might not know, just to say, hey, I see you. I loved your work. I'm also a writer. I guess you wouldn't have to say that, but just to reach out and to communicate with other writers that you admire, that you enjoy, and see what can happen from there. She writes about hanging out with people who support your work, which is a huge, huge thing. Making a rejection a process. something that other books have talked about, but this is, just a unique perspective. Now, most of these I got secondhand probably, and they're a bit older. I think it does us a great disservice to shove away things and pieces of advice that are older than 5 years. Everything moves so quickly right now with the internet and social media, and we have so much coming at us. A lot of these books were written before that happened, and so it might seem like, oh, it's not relatable because these authors weren't dealing with these other pressures. But I think what these books show is that pressures have always been around. Distractions have always been around. That's part of a writing life. But how we manage them really hasn't changed all that much. So something to keep in mind. Also, I think all of these are written by women, and I own that. Like, that is something that I believe in. I personally can relate to books written by women with their lived experience that is more similar to mine than a lot of male writers. I will take the hits that come with that. It's fine. I'm not discounting anyone else's experience or advice, but I do think there are certain challenges that come with being a female creator, a woman creator. So these books definitely help me to see that it's possible, on top of everything, expectations that are put on women by society, motherhood, being a wife, being a daughter, all of these things. It's still possible, attainable, and necessary to do this work. All right, the next one I've talked about before, so I won't spend too much time on it. It's The Creative Doer by Anna Lovind. This came out 4 or 5. Wow. It's going to be almost 6 years ago. A brave woman's guide from dreaming to doing. I'm including this in this pile because I do think it's still a lesser known book, but one that is necessary. I bookmarked this to read to you all. She writes, if you want more than that, if you want to access your full creative power, if you want to experience flow on a regular basis, if you want to actually enjoy the creative process, then learning how to tend to your needs is mandatory. Again, this is coming from a perspective of someone who also needs to be a caregiver and who is running a household, who has kids, who maybe is not prioritizing themselves as much as they need to. And so she's advocating for the importance of tending to ourselves and tending to our needs. And I really and truly think that showing up for your creativity is part of that, at least for me, and I know for a lot of people that I know. Next book. Bell Hooks, Remembered Rapture, The Writer at Work. This book is gorgeous. Bell Hooks is a force. I have loved all of the writing of hers that I've read. Let's see, I have this dog marked. She writes, again, I was compelled to face the fiction that is a part of all retelling, remembering. And then she goes on to write, the longing to tell one's story and the process of telling is symbolically a gesture of longing to recover the past in such a way that one experiences both a sense of reunion and a sense of release. Sorry. It was the longing for release that compelled the writing, but concurrently it was the joy of reunion that enabled me to see that the act of writing one's autobiography is a way to find again that aspect of self and experience that may no longer be an actual part of one's life, but is a living memory shaping and informing the present. This book is a must-read, and really it's about writing as an act of being seen, of being heard, particularly if you're a minority. It's about the political act, really, of creating art and sharing your story. It's fantastic, and I highly, highly recommend this book. But that quote in particular made me think of a lot of what we do here on YouTube, is telling our stories, the vlogging, all of this stuff. It's another way of storytelling, and so all of these books on writing can impact your storytelling here on YouTube. So keep that in mind, because I think sometimes we discount the writing element of sharing videos. It's a different art form, but it incorporates writing. We think about what we're going to say similarly to how we might think about writing a personal essay. The flow of it, the impact behind it, the choice of words. So really, all of these books can definitely help storytelling in any way. All right. Next is A Writer's Guide to Persistence, How to Create a Lasting and Productive Writing Practice by Jordan Rosenfeld. I love the cover of this one. And on the back it says, practice, polish, persist. Let's see. This section on revision really struck me. She writes, revision is not a sign of weakness. It's merely a product of the truth that very little is built, constructed, or finished in one pass. Amen. This book in particular, really breaks down different aspects of a writing life and writing practice. How to keep going, how to bring yourself back to the page, the work, whatever, when you don't necessarily want to. Building practices that make it sustainable so that you don't burn out. She talks about boundaries, she talks about balance, taking time for the work, breaking the blocks to creative flow. So again, these things there's a lot of similarities in these books, but they all have a different perspective. They all have a different layout. So if you take this list of books to the library, for example, check out the books from the library. You can see what works best for your brain, and which ones might be the most impactful for you specifically. This one is very specific to writing. This is DIY MFA. It is by Gabriela Pereira, and it is basically the tenets of an MFA program all in a book. An MFA stands for Masters of Fine Arts, and in some places and circles, it is highly recommended to get an MFA in creative writing. That is not entirely accessible for a lot of people. Writing it's not that it doesn't bring in an income. It certainly can, but just having your MFA in creative writing, that can be a huge expense and a burden, and not everyone can do that. I don't have an MFA. But this book talks about write with focus, read with purpose, build your community. And those three things, writing, reading, and building your community, are huge parts of why people join MFA programs. There's more to it, of course, and it's a completely valid option. Just like I said, it's not accessible for everyone. So books like this can really help you to feel like you are learning some of those same skills in your own timeline, in a way that is supportive and might not leave you with a ton of student debt. But yeah, check this one out if you are interested in kind of creating your own program for learning and want a little bit of a guide. All right, this one, I have had this book forever. Not forever. My friend Jen, who just started a Patreon of her own, Jen's Whimsical Reading Life, I think. I'll link below. She sent this book to me years and years ago. We're Instagram friends. We've been Instagram friends for a very long time. And yeah, it's a special book. It has a special place in my heart. And it was the first book that I chose for my Patreon book club back in January. It is The Crossroads of Should and Must, Find and Follow Your Passion by L. Luna. This is such a sweet, short book on shoulds and musts and how we can connect with our must and really put away the shoulds. One second. How long will you wait to honor who you are? It's beautiful. It's colorful. She uses gorgeous illustrations. And this really is a book for any and all creatives. Even if you don't think you're creative, this can give you some insight into what's important to you and maybe make you think about, what, this sounds so trite, what you want to do with the rest of your life, but really focusing on what you value. One more in the lesser known, it's on my Kindle. It is Sarah Painter's Stop Worrying, Start Writing. How to Overcome Fear, Self-Doubt, and Procrastination. Here's the cover of this one. Sarah Painter had a podcast it's been quite a while. I think it was titled, let's go to her introduction, Worried Writer Podcast. I heard about her podcast, I don't even remember where, and it was so pivotal and so important to me in my writer's journey because I had all of these worries and I let them stop me in a lot of ways. But when I heard her podcast, when I heard her speak in her beautiful Scottish accent, when I heard her interact with fellow authors as guests on her podcast, I felt so seen, I felt heard, I felt understood, and I felt like, wow, if these people who have published books on their own or with publishers, if they've had these same worries, that really doesn't mean that they should stop me from living my life, from writing the books that I want to write, to putting my work out in the world. So yeah, it was hugely, hugely impactful. And her book has all of the best parts of that podcast wrapped up into one. And she is a gentle but firm voice on getting past all of the worries and really believing in yourself. Now, I have 2 books that I'm currently reading that I wanted to share, and a couple new releases or new to me books that I thought you might like on your radar as well. So first off, I am reading Spring Summer Asteroid Bird by Henry Lien. It's the art of Eastern storytelling. It is a book about the 4-part story structure of Eastern telling versus the 3 acts of Western storytelling. I'm about a third of the way in. I'm reading it with a couple friends, and it's so fascinating, just the difference in storytelling. And what I love is when the author shared about how this story structure might not be as palatable to those in the West as those in the East. And he likened it to different cultural foods, ethnic foods. Food serves the same purpose all across the world, but our tastes are different, and what we think is comfortable and what we enjoy is so much based on our culture. So I'm excited to keep reading this with my friends and thought it might be something that you would be interested in. I hope you are. The next book probably doesn't need an introduction, and it will eventually end up on like the Rick Rubins and the Julia Camerons list of the world. But it is We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something by Amy McNee. Amy has been on Instagram forever. She's here on YouTube. I've been a part of her Inspired Collective group for a couple sessions. She's another force, just a force. And this is the May-June book club pick over on my Patreon. So we're getting into it over there. If you are reading this or would like to read it with some support and some questions, some journal questions, I will be highlighting Amy's journal questions as well as asking some of my own, because I love to do that. Let's see. There are so many lovely parts of this book. What I will say is, and what's come up already, is I think that it includes things that she has not talked about before. And sometimes when you get books from folks who are super active on social media, the books don't feel like something new or fresh because we've seen it all before. We've seen them share this information on their social media or in essays and blogs, whatever. But I do feel like there is something new and fresh in this book. I've gotten a lot out of it. I think I'm almost halfway through. I've gotten a lot out of it already. And yeah, so if you haven't read it, I'd be curious, are you planning to read it? If you've read it, are you enjoying it? Do you feel like it's something different than what she's done before? But yeah, I love it. And I love that it's still so her, even though, because she is self-published, she's been very vocal about it. She's been very vocal about picking yourself, coronating yourself. And I love that she's been able to hold on to so much of that with this book, even though she's gone with a traditional publisher for it. You know, the artwork is very, very Amy, and very recognizable. So it's very cool. So these next three are ones that have either been recently published. Yeah, 2 recently published. Another one that a friend and Patreon member recommended to me and actually is mentioned in Amy's book. This is Your Art on Brain, How the Arts Transform Us by Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross. I mean, look at this cover. It is absolutely stunning. So I don't know too much about it other than the fact that they talk about, I'm just reading the back here. Many of us think of the arts as entertainment, a luxury of some kind. In Your Brain on Art, authors Susan Magsamen and Ivy Ross show us how activities from painting, making music, and dancing to expressive writing, architecture, and more are essential to our lives. Yes, my friend Michelle, I think I know a lot of Michelle's, but if you recommended this to me, Michelle, you know who you are, and thank you. I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to dive in, and I was really excited to see their work mentioned in We Need Your Art. I thought that was a really cool crossover, and love that the studies that they did are showing up elsewhere already. I think it's a relatively new book, 2023, so it's a couple years old. Next up, again, I have not read these. Next is Sarah Selecki's Story is a State of Mind, Writing and the Art of Creative Curiosity. This came out earlier this year. Designed for authors seeking support on individual projects or their practice as a whole, this book is overflowing with tips and tools to develop and support creative curiosity and whole-minded writing. It's a very interesting author, writer, and person, so I'm looking forward to reading this soon. And lastly is the Book of Alchemy, A Creative Practice for an Inspired Life by Suleika Johad. I should have looked that up. I have listened to so many interviews with her. I cannot believe I don't know how to pronounce her last name. Suleika, New York Times bestselling author of Between Two Kingdoms, which is a book I really enjoyed. Here is the cover. I love that it's got the same kind of color vibe going on as this book. I think that just shows what kind of vibe and era we're in right now with covers. It's beautiful, and yeah, the color theme is very cool. So this is a guide to the art of journaling and a meditation on the central questions of life. But I'm really excited to dive in. I've followed along a little bit on her book tour, which has been kind of unique, and her story, and her Substack, which is beautiful and gentle and really life affirming. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one very soon. So, that's it. I think that's all I've got. But yeah, I'll make sure to put the titles and the authors in the description below. What are your favorite books on the creative life? What are your favorite books about writing? What are your favorite books about knitting as a practice? What are your favorite books on how to live a creative life? There are so many out there, and there are so many that don't end up on bestseller lists, so we might not hear about them. So that's why I kind of wanted to give these a little bit of a shout out, revisit some that are a little bit older, because they still have so much wisdom to share, and yeah, I think they can be so helpful. If you read just the right book at just the right time, it can influence your work. And I am so sorry about the noise of the cars outside. It is, I don't know where this traffic is coming from. I apologize, but the rest of the house was kind of busy, so this is what it is. But yeah, if you are to read just the right book at just the right time, it can change everything. So I would be curious if you've heard of any of these, if you've read any of these, if you're going to check them out, please let me know. And I'm so glad that you're here. Until next time, be well, happy reading, and happy creating. See you next time.